Okay, so today I'm going to show Eric here how to be a degen and leverage some ETH because JournalDAO has the money to pay back a loan in case everything goes horribly wrong, and you all are doing it out there anyway, so we might as well show you how.
So what is the 30-second, I'm explaining this to my Aunt Chris at Thanksgiving about what we're doing here.
You're basically taking out a loan on your house. You could think of it that way. But it has really good terms, and as long as your house, in this case the ETH, keeps appreciating in value, then it won't get seized by the bank. So depending on how much ETH you have and how much you want to borrow, the risks go from like 0 to 100%. And I think we all think we're better than this until we try it. And then I've just heard so many smart people getting liquidated. I almost did. And I just think it's something that we should not shy away from and just shame people for doing, because I think most of us are intrigued by the idea of, having an ever appreciating asset that we can borrow against. And even if you know what you're doing, and there's definitely a rational zone in which this is just good finances, since the rate to pay back your loan is a lot better usually than what you'd get in any like real world asset collateralized loan. So we'll kind of go over all the specifics. You can see it happen and judge for yourself whether it's a good idea or not.
And so when you say liquidated, that means like the value of your collateral, in this case, the ETH has dropped to a point where the lender is like, yeah, your collateral is not worth enough anymore. So we're gonna call in the principal. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And the nice part is it's all code that's doing this. So it's brutal and unforgiving, but it just handles it the same for everybody. So you'll see, I don't know how AAVE displays it, but there is, you'll be told your liquidation price, or you can calculate it yourself. And then if the price of ETH falls to that for some like very short amount of time, there's usually like a buffer for just like flash crashes or like reporting errors or whatever. But then if ETH falls below that, at or below that, then your entire sum goes away and goes to the provider. And so here I think we're going to put up 6 ETH and try and borrow $1,100 in stable coins. And so you'll see that this has an APY here for locking up your ETH, which looks like almost 12%.
And so is that the rate that will be charged for borrowing?
No, that's amount of reward we'll get for locking up our ETH, because it's the locking up part as collateral is actually like a benefit. It's us doing
Or basically staking it.
the service, yeah.
Okay.
And then the borrowing is the service that they're providing us, and then that has its own. So you see the borrow, I think those percentages are the APY that we pay on the loan.
All right. So do I hit supply here?
Yeah, it looks like you've connected the wallet, and then.
And so, okay, so we need to, so the goal is to borrow $1,100. How is it determined how much is required for collateral for that?
Every protocol has its own terms. Here's what we want: liquidation threshold. Can you click the
threshold at which a borrow position will be considered under collateralized and subject to liquidation for each collateral? For example, if a collateral has a liquidation threshold of 80%, It means that the position will be liquidated when the debt value is worth 80% of the collateral value. Okay.
Okay, so that's pretty high. Oh, that's because this is USDC. Why don't you go to ETH and see what let's see what the details at the top. Oh, there you
Here's
go.
ETH. You want?
Yeah. No, it's still pretty high, 85%. But that might be if you're borrowing ETH. What are the details on the supplying ETH side? Or click out of this and do the details button
Oops.
next to it.
Okay.
But yeah,
So
cool.
what do you think? USDC or no?
Yeah, that it has a good percentage, and it's just, everything we're doing is above board. It's backed by the US government in some way.
USDC is through Circle.
Yep, which means you can have your USDC frozen and be blacklisted, but it also means that you're less likely to lose any holdings in USDC if you're not doing anything the government doesn't like, versus like theoretically DAI could be depegged and go the way of Luna, so could most other stables. But for USDC, there's an actual dollar that you can always exchange USDC for.
Well, there have been times when the government doesn't like journalism, although I think I think the Treasury Department in this case will be supportive.
Yeah, we're gonna spend this before they even know what's going on.
Okay, so we come back here to the ETH supply. Is that the first step?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then just do this 6.
So why basically the full amount? Explain that to me.
Yeah, so just like any collateralized loan, like the more you put up for collateral, the more you can borrow. And in this case, since it's a volatile asset, the more we have backing it, the lower our liquidation price, which means like it's less and less risky. So like when you start out borrowing, like say you borrow $1 and your liquidation price is like, I don't know, $5. That means that if ETH suddenly plummets to $5 per ETH, you will lose all 6 of your ETH that you put up just to borrow that $1. But like that's extremely unlikely, and extremely unlikely that it would happen so fast that you wouldn't be able to just come back and repay your loan. It's like, I think an interesting part of taking out leverage is just the different type of attention that you put on on ETH price or whatever you're borrowing against. It's like, suddenly I'm checking things like a lot more, and I'm setting like different prices. Like, oh, if ETH drops to this, then I'm probably going to go and pay back some of my loans, so that like my liquidation price kind of keeps going down as ETH price goes down. And then if ETH price goes up, then you can borrow more. And there are actually coins that will automatically do this for you, so you don't actually get liquidated. But it just like swings twice as much. As if ETH goes up $50, then that goes up like twice that percentage. And then if it goes down, then it goes down twice that percentage.
Gotcha.
And so the reason why ETH is so popular to collateralize is because it's like, so the fundamentals are so strong. It's kind of like, second only to Bitcoin. And it's just really hard to imagine like another $80 ETH situation, be just purely by like the Lindy effect, and everyone who's built stuff on Ethereum, everyone is like forced to use it. It's just like the only way it could go down that far is like by all its users just kind of disappearing, it seems like. or like some macro event, or yeah, it's just like a solid asset.
I was recommended earlier today on a podcast. I think the website is, I want to say, Coin Central, where you can or Token Central maybe, where you can see, it tracks the revenue of a lot of projects and protocols, so you can see like what revenue the Ethereum ecosystem is bringing in over the last like 7 day period. And Ethereum is actually, in terms of revenue, like far beyond Bitcoin, and far beyond everything else actually. So that's, in terms of fundamentals that you're talking about, that's a little, at least a little reassuring.
Yeah, there's some algorithms you can put it through to like that traditional finance people use for just like companies versus like revenue and costs and expenses and everything. And if you follow that, then each price should be like around $6,000 or something. So it's like, in traditional terms, it's very undervalued, but fundamentals don't really matter. So take
Right.
that take that with a grain of salt if everyone starts hating Ethereum and
Not
goes,
investment
you know,
advice. Right.
again.
All right. So do we go ahead and hit supply here? Gas prices aren't horrendous. So I've got I don't know if it popped up on the screen, but I've got a MetaMask dialog here. Gas at about $17 to from AAVE. Just make sure everything is legit here.
Yeah, we can't see it on the screen,
You
but
can, okay.
that's for the best.
All right, I'll go ahead and hit confirm, and while gas prices are going up. Okay, so it has been submitted, and now the wait begins. All right, transaction confirmed. We supplied 6 ETH, although it is actually wrapped ETH. That's the actual token that represents our stake, I guess.
Oh, right. So then you would want to add that.
Okay, so that's added.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead and see if it is in there. And okay, yeah, we have 6 AAVE in our wallet now.
Okay.
And oh, interesting. Okay. So yeah, the 6 ETH has disappeared and moved to AAVE. Okay, and so that is that ETH is tied up as long as we have the loan out, correct?
Yeah, so right now we could just pull it out again if we wanted to, but as soon as we borrow against it, then you can only withdraw an amount that doesn't liquidate yourself.
Okay, so that interesting. That did change what's available to borrow, and so we can basically, yeah, now borrow up to, looks like 120% or something like that, roughly. So we can borrow up to 7,800 worth of USDC. Which so if we were to borrow that full amount of USDC, that means that a relatively small drop in the price of ETH would liquidate us. Is that right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So what people do is they'll borrow that full amount and then use that full amount, that 7,800, to then go buy more ETH and then add it to their collateral, which then, so overall their liquidation price has only slightly increased, but they've gotten more exposure to ETH. And so if you're like long on ETH, then this can make sense because you're basically buying ETH cheap now, and then you're getting the upside to it, which later you can use to like, the amount of loan stays the same, but your collateral is like expanding. And so then you can like slowly pay that back, or just let it be there forever if like ETH goes to 40,000 and you bought at 1,500, and it's extremely unlikely that you'll ever see 1,500 again.
So, okay, I've heard of people doing this being like quadruple leveraged, right?
Mhm.
So just so like if you were to do that, so you take like this 6 ETH, and then I guess so theoretically you could, if you were to quadruple leverage it, you could turn the 6 ETH into 24 ETH. Is that right? Or not quite that, or it's not, doesn't
Not
work.
quite, because you borrow up to like 80% every time, so you get
Okay.
like, so you can only get 80% of it the next time, and then you add that, and then you can only get 80%. So it's more like algorithm. You get diminishing returns the more you do it.
Okay.
But there's calculators out there. I'll try and dig one up for just Google Sheets that you can kind of put in your numbers and play out different scenarios.
But so you do this like 4 times, and you could easily be tripling your exposure to the original asset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say we start with 6 ETH and we do this 4 times, we end up with 18 ETH, and then the price of ETH collapses, so that so then basically you automatically lose everything, more or less, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but you're not on the hook for anything additional, correct?
Correct. Unless you've used what you've borrowed there to then do other things elsewhere.
Somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Okay.
within that loan.
So interesting. Okay. So it's kind of, you're betting that you're not going to lose everything. So it sounds like it increases the potential upside, but doesn't increase the downside of the worst case scenario, which I guess is always zero. I guess you can't double zero.
So if there's like one dip before it takes off, then you can measure it as losing your initial investment, or you can measure it as losing the potential if you had just held on to that and not done anything, and then where that would have gotten you, which is a steeper cost, but like maybe a rational way to look at it.
Hmm.
So it's like there be dragons. It's definitely a risk, and we've seen things happen over the past year that nobody thought would happen. And so I think as soon as you think, oh, that'll never happen, then you're probably in trouble.
Meaning
The price
the
dipping,
price
or
the price
whatever.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
the price went down 80% depending on what token we're talking about. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, nobody who's leveraged thought it would happen, probably.
Right.
And that's why they're leveraged. So it's like, yeah, it's dangerous.
For the record, I know a few people that we both know who think that ETH is not necessarily on the way up from here on out. That
Mm,
that this we didn't see the bottom yet.
right.
I mean,
Could be.
there's an interesting case for the merge, just like there being a big hiccup with the merge, that which, just in terms of the way technology works, actually seems likely.
Mhm.
Uh, and so and then it would just depend how big the reaction is to that there's a big dip before things finally work out. So is that something we should be concerned about doing this?
Yeah, and I think we'll see where our liquidation price ends up. And, you know, if we ultimately decide it's too risky, we can just pay this back at the end of the video or whatever. But yeah, I'm doing it because I'm like, I would definitely be super bummed about, losing I think I've leveraged up to like 8 ETH or something like that. And I would be bummed out about losing that. But I'm already monitoring the price of ETH like all day, every day. And I've just kind of come up with my, you know, oh, I can get in and pay this back. I have the resources. If it all starts going down, I can kind of just farm it or manage it until, yeah, I don't know. hopefully this video ages well.
Yeah. All right. Well, here we go. Let's. I'm going to click on the USDC, and we were talking about 1100, and I don't remember how we arrived at that number. I know we have 500. Oh, yeah, I do. It had to do with fees we're paying for sponsorship and for incorporation. So I put in 1100 USDC. The borrow APY rate, a variable 1% or a stable 10%. What's going on there?
Let's hit the info button on that one.
Variable rate can increase and decrease depending on the amount of liquidity in the reserve, and stable rate will stay the same for the duration of your loan. Okay, so you're paying quite a premium to know what your rate is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Again, I would say that this is are you gonna babysit this thing, or are you gonna walk away from it like for a month? And I think as long as you're checking in with it and monitoring it, then the variable is worth it. I've checked in occasionally with AAVE and I don't see these percentages change that much, but it definitely could happen. I would guess, like, if you're gonna walk away from this for like a year, you definitely want to hit the stable.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like too much of a premium to pay. Health factor. Okay, so is this the liquidation that we're talking about, or we're not there yet? Health factor infinity to 7.34, liquidation at less than 1. So in other words, this is a pretty healthy amount to be borrowing, is what that seems to be saying. Is that right?
If they don't present us with the actual liquidation price, I'll get a calculator and attach it to this post so that other people can figure out like at what price they would be liquidated. I wish they would just.
Well, if I hit borrow, I mean, I'm still going to have to confirm from the wallet. So I guess we can see if it gives us more information, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so should I confirm this transaction then? We didn't get the information we were looking for there about liquidation.
Yeah, let's just confirm it, and then because we can undo this if necessary. But
do you keep track of your gas fees for like like when you're targeting when you want to cash out on something, you're always keeping your gas fees in mind to make sure you've covered them?
I just have a thing that puts the ETH gas in my nav bar of my computer, and if it's higher than like I think I can get reasonably, then I just don't do my transaction. But I'm not, as long as I'm within like about where we're at. I think gas is like 33 right now. That'd probably be the highest that I'd go, and I'd only do that if I'd need, like, now. If it was like time dependent, and I'd probably, at least these days, I'd try and target like 15 or below.
All right, well, we've done it. Are you seeing the MetaMask screen right now?
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so there we are. Our ETH has been depleted. We've got the 1100 USDC that we just borrowed, and then we've got the 6 ETH tied up in the AAVE token here.
So does
So
AAVE tell you anything about your loan now?
let's see. Okay, your borrows balance of 1096. Borrow power use 14%, APY 1%. And then so on our supplies.
See if I can just do a quick.
So if it goes, so we're at 7.3 or whatever that health factor means, or 11.5% loan to value. And if that goes all the way up to 85%, then that's liquidation. Or actually 82.5, it looks like.
Okay, it looks like there's a tool. If you go to avecalculator.com, maybe we can test this out. And select your collateral type.
Six. So okay, the price is this right? The price of ETH would have to go down to $215.
Yep.
Okay, so that seems pretty reasonable. Um, and if it starts to go down that far, we're already crying quite a bit anyway. So like, for something like this, like when are like when are you considering some sort of, as you're watching the price of ETH, like when are you considering some sort of action? Like if the price goes down, like at what point does it have to go down to?
For me, it's around like 400, like the difference between like 1200 and 1600. Like if I'm going to be near a computer, I feel like the chances of it dropping like 400 points before I can like get to a computer and like pay some back or whatever is pretty low, even at some of like the steepest declines. Like, that wasn't really too much of an issue, especially since you get like these signs that things are going wrong. This is all like just
Right.
only a year of me paying attention. So, this definitely is not like it could just plummet like 1,000 within like a minute or whatever. That's kind of like where I'm at, just based on my own internal model of how I've seen the price fluctuate. And I do, part of this is I treat this as, a lot of the money I've lost in crypto, I feel like has been worth the education price, like compared against if I'm going to go get like a business degree or like study finances or whatever. This is like a very efficient shortcut to a lot of knowledge. And just doing this leverage made me really understand like the 2008 crisis a lot more, and just like the trust that we put in institutions,
Mhm.
because I think they've been allowed to like, and basically like the banks and institutions are doing like way dumber stuff than most degens are, but they're doing it with other people's money, and they're also like shaming people for doing it themselves, and making people feel bad about it just because they think they're like the holders of the knowledge, like the anointed experts. But we've seen time and time again that like people are supposed to be experts get liquidated. And so I think it's just like an even playing field to give individuals the chance to make the same mistakes, um, and then also benefit in the upside, because the banks do get a lot of upside, and then when they get over leveraged and they get liquidated, like the government basically just gives them the money back that they bet.
Right.
So um and individuals don't really get that.
So you said like in this hypothetical, we're looking at ETH around 1600. We would get liquidated at 200, and you said like if it were to go down 25% to around like 1200, that's when you might like start to pay attention and start to pay some of it back, right? And like how would you determine how much to pay back, or what's the thinking there?
Oh well, for ours, I would wait. I'm saying like if my liquidation price was 1,200, then I would probably wait till 1,600 to take action. But since we're at 200, I mean, I wouldn't even really pay attention until it was at 600 or 800. I mean, if it goes below 1,000 at this point, for just from where we are recording this, like something really bad has happened. And so I would
Mhm.
definitely like be on alert and start thinking like, oh, I should probably just pay this back, because it's not worth like the anxiety of writing this out.
Right, and so and 1,000 per ETH is, are you picking that because that would basically be a new bottom for this cycle, right? Is that where that comes from?
Yeah, I think we went down to like 800. And another thing you can do is, so repaying the loan is one option, but you can also just buy more ETH and then add that to your collateral to drive down your liquidation price. So I think you and I were both long on ETH. Like, who knows? If we do get a flash crash, we think that it will come back eventually in long term. We don't know how long of term that will be. the merge, there will probably be like a bunch of just volatility every which way. So, but eventually like that will settle down. And then I think our hypothesis is we're bullish on merge or post merge ETH. And so if you're just protecting yourself against liquidation, then it makes sense to, if ETH goes down that far and you're long on the asset, then that's like a super steal, like that's on sale. And so rather than pay back
Right.
that loan, I'd rather just like buy up a bunch of this asset that I'm bullish on and then add that to the collateral. And that can drive down your liquidation price too.
So yeah, so if come like a couple weeks from now, there's like some kind of a major hiccup with the merge, uh, which I think is a really strong possibility. Um, and the price drops to 900. We're back here, like not necessarily paying this off, but buying more at a discount.
Yeah, the trade-off is that it's more efficient just to pay back your loan. So you need like, I don't know what it is, something like twice as much money to buy ETH and add it to the collateral to get the same liquidation price as if you just paid back your loan. So that's where the downside is. But if you have, if you have a sizable amount like outside of the loan to basically like your war chest, then when it does bounce back, then you can get a lot more upside.
All right. Well, so we've basically given ourselves yet another reason to obsess over sites like CoinMarketCap and, and the price of all these things. And just when fantasy football season is starting, I don't know. I mean, it's too many things, man.
Yeah, this is my new fantasy football. I don't even do football anymore. And I'll just say like, so it's a spectrum, right? Between like completely conservative, just like moral high ground, no matter what, of just never entering into this game. But just like credit itself is not always a bad thing for like a lot of businesses. Like let's talk about like JournalDAO for a second. Like if we couldn't do this, there's like, this unlocks a lot of good and activity and other like economic activity that we can do in the short term before we even have revenue, just like by these donations without sacrificing our, you'd say like, well, why don't you just sell the ETH to get the money that you need? But then that's kind of like, that's a huge opportunity cost. Whereas like if something does take off with ETH, then we're in a totally different possibility sphere of like what we could do. And so to sell that off for like costs when we're just starting out, I think, this is just this is like a sovereign version of, a VC backed startup or business loan or whatever it is. There's always some risk, but this allows us to do things we couldn't otherwise. I think there's a lot of good in that. And so, nobody knows exactly where stupidity starts and and savviness ends. But I don't think people should swear this off entirely, like categorically. I think everyone needs to be smart about it and make these decisions for themselves and know the risks, but also know the opportunities. And I'd say it's a trade-off, just like anything else. This seems like a reasonable one to me, but like this is way more conservative than I'm being with my own personal finances, and I'm trying to dial it back when I'm advising other people or whatever. Not that I'm advising anyone here. Why we have to say that, but we do. And does that make sense? That my
Yeah, I think And yeah, I appreciate the lesson, and yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on this, and paying a couple of bills in the meantime. So any final thoughts on any of this before we sign off?
No, just that I'm far from an expert. I'm just somebody who has done this and tried it and sharing my experience. So uh, I'm sure somebody's watching this who is like a lot more savvy and knows more than me. So please reach out and educate us, please.